Hello, welcome to the Daily Grind here on Latte Firm. It is Saturday, the 2nd of August. Welcome, one and all. Hope you've had a great start to your weekend from wherever you are watching. Now, inspired by last night's late night lounge where we talked about Arteta and some of the things that he's got to fix, isn't it all obvious post the North London derby? It did turn into a bit of a meltdown, bit of a moan fest. And so I thought I'd be inspired today and invite my good friend Rice, who is a coach, of course, and the man behind Pythagorean Boots. Welcome to the firm to talk through some of the things that we can get Arteta to do to fix the issues that we've talked about. Pythag, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Thank you. We'll try our best. And yeah, pleasure to be on board.
Yeah, of course, it does sound a little bit sort of patronizing that we're going to try and get Miguel Arteta to fix things, but this is just our view as fans to talk about things that we've seen that we want sort of addressing as the Arsenal fan base, because let's face it, after the North London derby defeat, old habits have sort of crept in, and people are talking about the horseshoe. People are talking about the left-hand side. People are talking about the way that we progress the ball. People are talking about the lack of central combinations and central sort of penetration and chance creation. And that is what I want to get all your thoughts. By the way, if anybody's wondering, Pythagorean Boots, what's all that about? Well, I'll let you sort of introduce yourself in a minute, Rice. But it's the second time you've been on the firm. And I've got to say, we did a video just a few days ago where we talked about the impact that Victor Gyökeres and Nani Madueke might have. And it's one of the most popular videos of the Daily Grinds this summer. It's absolutely phenomenal. Rice delivered a tactical masterclass. So I'm really happy that you're back. Tell us about the channel, Pythagorean Boots.
Yeah, so obviously in terms of my background, worked at West Bromwich Albion for about seven years. And then I moved into law. So I've been a lawyer for the past seven years. Obviously still had that passion for football, carried on doing football analysis in my spare time. And then obviously the channel grew to the point where players started getting in contact, started doing a bit of performance analysis for professional players. Then they obviously knew I was a lawyer. So I started doing contract negotiations with professional clubs as well in the Championship, Bundesliga. And then I became a qualified football agent. So that's sort of my background in terms of Pythagoras and Boots. And then obviously this summer, started appearing on the BBC, got a new TV show out called The Last Pundit Standing, which is out on iPlayer. So yeah, it's been moving quite quickly.
And I got to say, that show is so good. And we were just talking before we came on air. You're also a family man. Let's not forget that. I don't know how you squeeze all of these things in, but I'm grateful that you've made the time for us. And the viewing public are also very, very happy that you're here. Keep the chat active. I will get through as many of the chat as we normally do. First place to start is basically what's been known as the horseshoe, as Garv says. Man, it's time to go. Yeah, it's time to go, the horseshoe. Let me bring up the graphics as we normally do. So first up, let's talk about this because we talked about it last night. It's something that's been described, and for anybody who's sort of unfamiliar with this, and there's a reason why Victor Gyökeres is on screen, Arsenal over the last sort of 2-3 years, we found ourselves in situations when things weren't quite going right. We sort of struggle to create and to break down opposition. It's those sort of deep low blocks that are really sort of challenges for us, and we tend to find a tendency where we try and work the ball out to the left hand side, we sort of come back into the center and got the right hand side, then we come back into the center and got the left hand side, hence horseshoe. What do we see on screen here, Rice, and how do we solve this? How does Mikel go about eradicating this once and for all?
So there's a number of issues to talk about on this pitch. Now, the first thing I just want to highlight is that if you look at each player, I've given them sort of a highlight between what's their favorite foot and what's not their favorite foot. And I think this is really important because this is what creates the horseshoe. So for example, someone like Martinelli, being a right-footed player, his favorite position to be on the pitch is where in that inside left half space, inside the box. That's where he would feel most effective on the football pitch. Likewise, on the opposite side of the flank, you've got Saka, who is more of a two-footed player than Martinelli, but ultimately he is more left foot dominant and he'd want to cut in onto his left foot to get the shot off. Then if you look at the inside midfield half space players, your Odegaards and your Rices. Rice, again, very right foot dominant. Odegaard, very left foot dominant. So what you've got then is on the left side, two players gravitating towards central region of the pitch. And on the other side, you've got Saka and Odegaard also operating in the same areas of the pitch. Then to compound these matters, you've got your fullbacks. Now, Ben White, for me, is probably Arsenal's best attacking fullback in terms of when he does get into good areas, he's got good delivery. And if he makes the right run and it's played in at the right time, he will get deliveries, he will get assists. The issue I've noticed with Ben White, and I don't know if Arsenal fans agree, is that once he gets to that area of the pitch that I've just highlighted with the circle, if he's confronted by a fullback, then he's not going to take that man on one and beat that man again and again and then get his delivery in. For example, a Jeremy Frimpong would do for Bayer Leverkusen. Ben White will, what he'll do is put his foot on the ball, he'll do that little foot roll, move back, and then play it back into Odegaard. And we see that again and again and again. And what that leads to is stagnation, staleness in possession. And that's the big problem, because it's all reliant on Saka to provide that penetration, that magic out on the right-hand side. And that's so much burden to have on just one player as your sort of game breaker, in my opinion.
I'm really glad that you brought up the subject of fullbacks, and we'll talk about fullbacks in the final third and the contribution that they can make to our attacking play this season. There's an interesting comparison to Jeremy Frimpong, so viewers stay tuned for that. Victor Gyökeres, a bully of a centre forward who has a prolific goal scoring record, loves to carry the ball, loves to eat up grass. He's obviously our new boy, played 13 minutes against the old enemy the other day, but of course he's just so raw at Arsenal. How do you expect him to help us get over this problem?
So I think comparatively speaking to a Havertz, how he helps you is that if we see Odegaard and Havertz as a duo, as a central spinal combination, it's a very incompatible combination, because Odegaard, his best trait for me as a footballer is his vision. Like, once he's got that ball, he has got a good weight of pass and he loves to play through balls. But Havertz isn't the type of guy who's going to sort of get on the half shoulder, make those little runs again and again and again. For example, let's just say Ruud van Nistelrooy would do inside the box, right? Havertz is not that type of player. So then Odegaard feels stifled, because if he's got his head up looking for a pass, Havertz is probably coming right close to him to link up in front of him rather than make that run in behind. So that kills Odegaard off as a creator because of that. So for me, Gyökeres, at least, whether you rate him, you don't rate him, from a tactical profile point of view, he's going to make runs. He's going to want to sniff these little movements off the ball to then receive that ball. So suddenly Odegaard's got a chance now to feed someone that's going to run away from him, look for space, and he can slot those through balls through. So in that sense, definitely an improvement on Havertz. The downside, and I think we spoke about it in the last Latifem episode, is that Gyökeres' heading isn't as good as, say, a Havertz or a Marino, in terms of if he's got men tugging on his shirt and he's having to really fight for the ball. So if those crosses do come in, he's probably not going to be as effective. So in that sense, from a low block perspective, probably not an upgrade.
That is interesting. And, the sort of running in behind is something that we've missed. Saka would do it time and time again, but that came quite sort of predictable. Teams knew how to sort of double up, triple up on him. And you've got, on the graphic there, a couple of defenders. Havertz just isn't that sort of player. So really looking forward to what Victor Gyökeres can do. Martinelli's the sort of player that likes to be played into space. We don't do that enough because he's sort of, hugging the touchline at Mikel Arteta's request. Another player that we signed this summer, and of course he reports to London Colney for training on Monday, which is exciting for Arsenal fans, is Nani Madueke. What sort of role do you think he might play here with the Horseshoe?
So with Madueke, the only way that he can almost help resolve this Horseshoe problem is that, let's just say he plays in Martinelli's position. Now, being a left-footed player, he should, in theory, be able to go down the line more often than a Martinelli, which then stretches the pitch more open, and then should, in theory, get rid of the Horseshoe problem to a degree. My slight question mark on Madueke is that when he played for Chelsea out on the left, I personally thought he didn't look his best. I think in the Saka
What do you mean by that?
So instead of actually just going down the line and putting crosses in, he kept wanting to drift into central regions of the pitch, which if he keeps doing that at Arsenal, that's a problem, because that's just compounding the Horseshoe problem. So if he is going to play out on the left, he needs to be almost like a Gareth Bale type of left winger, which is really go down the line and attack that left space by the flank rather than cutting in, because Arsenal need a player that's going to stretch the game out. They need one winger who's just going to really penetrate down the sides, and let Saka be the interior type player. So that's what Madueke is going to have to be, discipline in that regard. And he's also going to have to be effective. And I can't say hand on heart that he's definitely going to be effective on the left. Now, I know he's played there for PSV. I know he's also put stints in there for England, but this is another level. The expectation level is a lot higher playing for Arsenal, and teams are going to be a lot more organized that he's going to be coming up against.
Yeah, and listen, while you were sort of describing that, it occurred to me that Martinelli, I've seen him sort of hug the touchline, and obviously he's sort of out there trying to make some space for runners in behind from midfield, and it's just not quite worked with Havertz, as we've just described. He's not that sort of player. Another suggestion that came up last night, Rice, was, Odegaard and Declan Rice, they're so fixed. Odegaard is always that sort of right eight. Declan Rice is sort of playing higher up. Obviously, now that Zubimendi's here, could they potentially swap? Is there something there to be said that Odegaard is just too sort of rigid and too disciplined in his own position? Could he maybe move over to the other side and Rice go over towards Saka?
100%. Like I think it's an absolute no-brainer to not have tried it. At least, I mean, he has tried it. To be fair, he did it against Porto. If you remember when Odegaard played in the left half space and played that assist through, so we know he can be productive from the left half space as well. And the beauty of him being in the left half space is that if he does make a run around Martinelli, then if Martinelli cuts in and then plays a little reverse through ball, then Odegaard can cross it first time. So that can give you width. And I think the key player that we need to talk about that's been a big loss for Arsenal is Xhaka. Because when Xhaka was playing LCM and he was making those overlapping runs around a Martinelli or even an underlap as well, but because he had the left foot, he could just deliver and clip balls in. He was generating assists. He was generating creation, and Arsenal looked so fluid with him in the team. So I think having a left footer in that area of the pitch and getting Odegaard out there could definitely help in certain games. I think Kimo FC, we had a little chat before I came on here. And I think one of the things we have to realize is not to be too negative in terms of this system, even in its current guise, does work against the majority of teams. What we're talking about here is that there will be moments within the season where you have to identify the fact that right now we're struggling in this particular game, not because the personnel is an issue, because even if I swap X for X or whatever, it's still going to be the same issue. It's a structural issue in this particular phase of the game. Identify it and then come up with that plan B. And then hopefully you then go on to win the game. So that's what we're talking about here. And this is one of those potential solutions where it could be a simple case of you just switch Rice, switch Odegaard. Suddenly these two midfielders can then go around their wingers, provide a bit of width, and it could provide the solution for that particular game. So I think we need to see a bit more experimentation from Arteta in this regard.
Yeah, I think he's got to be a little bit braver. And listen, this is important because as much as the horseshoe wasn't so prevalent last season, we actually spent a lot of our game state in a drawing situation. We were the second highest in the Premier League to have more minutes than most teams, obviously, in the league in a level game state, which is obviously not what you want when you're a team trying to go for the title. You need to be ahead and ahead early. You know, those are the ultimate. That's the ultimate utopia. By the way, just before we move on to another potential solution coming from the centre. Tom Osborne has gifted one Latte Firm membership. I have never seen that before. I'm assuming memberships have now gone live, and I don't know what that means. So, Tom, thank you. Do you have any idea? Have you got membership on your channel?
No idea what that means.
Okay,
Tom, did you give it to me? If so,
yeah. Have you? I
don't really know what to do with it.
Yeah, so if that's a gift to Rice, obviously very welcome. But Tom, thank you for that. It's a very wholesome moment, this, because it's the first time I've had this. But I appreciate you. Thank you for that. And Matthew was saying, my Saturday night is sorted. And Asim, welcome to the show, says, hey, FK, your graphics are always so clear and helpful in driving the point. Really good to see such quality outputs. I mean, look, the slide decks are normally things that I do, but this is absolutely all Pythag's work. He spent hours on this, he was telling me today. No, I'm just kidding. He's very efficient, very quick at this. But it's also the guests that really sort of explain what the point is. D-Day Spring. Welcome. A loyal viewer of the channel says the guys are very slow in getting into the opposition's half. The situation will not change except when they fix it, just like we had in 22-23. An unknown 1999 says, OMG, yes, Pythag, the GOAT is in the house. You talk about new players with new playing styles like Nani Madueke. Someone that we've been talking about for a long time is Eberechi Eze, of course. And this is his pass map, courtesy of Opta Analyst. And you can see a lot of that sort of central penetration. And the question to you is quite simple. We've kind of touched upon it on recent shows as fans recently, but is he going to solve this for us? Does he open up that door? Has he got the keys in his pocket, as it were?
I think what Eze does is he would make your horseshoe more effective. So I don't think he...
As in gets away from the horseshoe, or...
Oh, I don't think he gets you away from the horseshoe. I think he enables your horseshoe to stay intact, but be more productive within the horseshoe. Because
I see.
He would, if you look at those passes, that's pretty much where Declan Rice should be, if that makes sense, in the left half space. Now, I've seen people profile Eze as a winger, but I did an in-depth analysis on Eze, and I don't think he's a winger. I think he's a left inside forward. He can go out on the wing and do little magic on the wing, but he's not a full-time left winger that just hugs the touchline. And but then again, I say that, but someone like Kudus could potentially have also been seen in the same way. But I think Kudus is really coming alive as a right winger for Spurs. So I might be slightly wrong on there. But on the flip side, Kudus has Porro bombing on the overlap. So when Kudus does decide to cut in, he knows he's got the overlap. And we saw Porro be quite effective on the flank. So it's about, if you are going to play Eze on the left, it comes back to the same issue, which is we'll come to it, which is the fullback situation. You're going to need the right fullback to bring out the best in Eze if you are going to play him either as a left winger, but if you're going to play him as an LCM, again, the left winger or the left back does make a difference, I think, to bringing the best out of him.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the role that our fullbacks are going to have to play in the final third. We've got to find a balance. And to kind of get to that conversation, you've just talked about left back. I talked last night about the left-hand side for Arsenal being a problem. Now, this is courtesy of The Athletic, the chart on the left-hand side. People might have seen this before, but if you're seeing it for the first time, it just shows that 43% of our attacking touches were down the right-hand side. 24% of our attacking touches in the middle third, and 33% of our attacking touches down the left third, and that is the lowest proportion in the Premier League altogether. So we talk about Trossard, we talk about Martinelli both being in the shop window. Again, Rice, is this a system issue? Because people shout at me like, oh, we just need Rafael Leao, he'll solve all problems. We just need to go and get Rodrigo, he'll solve the problem. Surely it's deeper than that.
So this graphic can be a little bit misleading, purely because sometimes teams have a certain way of playing where they will want to build up down the right, and then they probably have their killer out on the left. So they want less touches on this. If you look at Barcelona, it would look quite similar to this, where Yamal gets a lot of touches out on the right-hand side, but Rafinha doesn't really touch the ball as often because they're waiting for him to join in with the attack at the right time. So for me, it's less of a problem in terms of how you split this up. But from an Arsenal point of view, what it means is that Saka's seeing a hell of a lot of the ball. And because of that fullback issue that we've mentioned, as well as the RCM issue with Odegaard cutting in, it means that even though he's getting a lot of the ball, it's stagnant possession because every team knows the ball's going out to Saka and they're camping out on him. And then he's not really getting the support to make the most of a lot of the ball that he's seeing. So it's leading to a lot of inefficient possession down that right side. So that's why it's a problem. I think if that right flank was working better, so even though it would see a lot of the ball, but if the dynamics were better and it was more effective, then it doesn't matter if it's seeing 43% possession. So I think the numbers in of themselves don't mean anything in this sense.
See, a little bit of context just adds so much more value, and that's not a point at you, Pythag. That's to the watching viewers, because last night we just went off on one. It was like a negative spiral. John P, welcome to the show. I think we've just answered that question. Thoughts on switching the eights, but thank you for your very generous donation to the channel. It is greatly appreciated. And Shane just before then saying, great analysis. Maybe the season isn't over before it starts. Dave is now a YouTube member. I'm assuming memberships have gone live. I need to understand how they kind of work. So I really appreciate that, Dave. I know you are a Patreon member. I don't know what's going on here. What is Dave's just gifted? What's going on here? Dave has gifted 5 Latte Firm memberships. Thank you, Dave. You are an absolute.
This is going off.
Dave is a diamond.
Yeah, I need to get on this membership stuff. I have no idea what.
Yeah, so
means,
it's basically to try and. I mean, so we have a Patreon community. So anybody watching, if you do want to support the channel, head over to Patreon. I would recommend you join via Patreon, just because they don't take obviously anywhere near the share that YouTube do, and the money goes towards running the channel. But then there are giveaways there with the Latte Firm YouTube memberships. Rice, I wanted to do like members only sort of
pods and stuff.
Pods and streams and Q&As. So Dave's very kindly just gifted 5 of those, which is amazing. I'm not quite sure, like, people's usernames have all changed now. Does this mean that Taylor is now, I've seen that before, I think they cost £5, been very generous. It's only for member content, custom emotes if you set them up. Right, I need to look into this. But Taylor's got a little something now next to his name, which I've seen.
A separate one, a separate episode.
Right, there we go. Right, I will figure this out. But I mean, this is amazing. Thank you so much, Dave. Really appreciate that. Thank you for keeping the chat alive. Fullbacks in the final third. Let's talk about this. You
Cool.
asked me to bring in the sort of heat maps, and these are the heat maps of Miles Lewis-Skelly, Jurrien Timber, and Ben White, respectively, all again courtesy of Opta. Talk to me about this.
So if we look at, say, Mars Lewis Skelly, and we probably know from the eye test as well, he's not really penetrating. If you look at, say, the penalty area and to the left of the penalty area, that it's just a white patch, isn't it? So he's not really attacking that final third. His left half space, pretty much where we say Declan Rice is, that's where Skelly, from an attacking sense, is gravitating to. And if you go to the opposite, well, not the opposite side, in the middle, during Timber, once again, he's predominantly picking the ball up in, say, an underlapping right back position. So behind a Saka. So he's not really going around the outside of him either. And then if you go to Ben White, who I think beforehand we said he's probably the most attacking of Arsenal's fullbacks from a penetrative point of view. But even Ben White, he's where it's really dark pink is sort of underlap position. He's not really making the final third his home. And so it comes back to that original point that I made about Saka being isolated, 2v1, not really having people around the outside of him. And likewise, on the other flank, I don't think Martinelli's getting that support either. And that's an issue. That's a problem because
This
you
is a big
need
problem.
overlaps to free people up and create decoys. Creating decoys in possession is very important. The reason why is anyone that's played football at any level, if you've got a decoy around the outside of you, then that will just naturally catch the defender's eye, pull them away from that player, and then you've suddenly left one-on-one, and then you can create that little shift, get your shot off. But if you're up against 2v1 like Saka is on a constant basis, it's so hard to get a shot off. Like, you could be Maradona, you could be Messi, it doesn't matter. It's going to be really, really hard.
It is. Sorry, it's all kicking off, and I'm really sorry that you're having to be my elite guest tonight because I'm figuring this out. KSSMYW says it's all going off in the streets out here, FK, and you deserve it. Thank you so much for that sterling content as always, bruv. I appreciate you, KSSMYW. You're one of the originals, one of the OGs from day one. There's a question here about. In fact, get your questions in to Pythag. Let me star them as we go along. We'll do a little Q&A at the end because we're coming towards the end of the slides that I wanted to cover. The overlapping fullbacks is a real problem, Rice, because a couple of years ago, Ben White, pre-injuries, was phenomenal at it. And that triangle that we had of Odegaard, Saka, and White, so effective. White often found himself in really good positions, deep positions up top in that final third. End product, a little bit sort of hit and miss, sometimes really good, other times not so good. But the fact that he would relentlessly go up and down, you get tired watching him. Now, Miles Lewis-Skelly on the left-hand side, to Martinelli's detriment, he loves to tuck in. He's not an overlapping fullback, and we don't have really an overlapping fullback. I mean, for a club that was collecting left backs, we don't seem to have one. And Jurrien Timber, who did a sterling job at right back last season, not quite the sort of, venturing forward, buccaneering sort of right back that Ben White is. So I think right hand side, if and when Arteta wants that sort of overlap, I think he's going to get it back in Ben White because he missed so much of last season. Mm-hmm. But left hand side, and this is the question that D-Day Spring has asked. How can Martinelli become better? What does he have to do? I mean, if he's not going to get that overlapping left back and he's not going to be allowed to sort of cut inside and do what you said in the first slide, right-footed, wants to cut in into that sort of inner channel and then go on goal. What can he do to improve? Because we know there's a good player in him. And I'm sick and tired of having this debate with so many Arsenal fans where they're just like, got to sell Martinelli, 70 million quid. Like, if we have doubts over him and want to sell him, the market value is just not going to be there. That's number one. Secondly, he's only 23 years of age. And over the last 3 years, he's got more goals from open play than Bukayo Saka has. So he's obviously talented, but how does he unlock him?
The thing with Martinelli is, if you look at the Champions League games, he was pretty good. He was one of your best players in the Champions League in the knockout. So we do know he's capable of hurting big teams. I think for me, the only way you can improve Martinelli is with that extra fluidity in the overlaps. Because in terms of, he's the type of player, because he gives 110% in how he plays, he's already quite close to his ceiling, if that makes sense. Because he's it's a weird one with Martinelli because he's quite mechanical in the way that he plays. Like, in terms of his sheer talent level and technical range, it's not super, super high. So he's already very close to operating close to what he is as a footballer. So the real way of maximizing that is just making sure that the players around him and the system around him allows him to do what he does best. So for me, to get the best out of Martinelli, it's about doing the things that we spoke about with Xhaka, getting those overlaps around him, getting a left back around him. These little nuanced things will then maximize a Martinelli. Because if you're not going to give him that, then he's just going to hit like a brick wall in certain games. That's the way I see it.
And do you know what? I want to sort of see you and raise you there. Man in the mirror just said, look, get him closer to goal. I think despite all the challenges that we have around personnel, I think Arsenal fans should expect more from Mikel Arteta to get the best out of what he's got. And for me, I see Martinelli and I see a boy struggling because he's asked to hug the touchline. And every time he gets the ball, the ball is driven to his feet rather than being played into space or played in behind, because that's where he'd thrive. And he's a sort of player, a bit like Walcott. I don't want him to have time to think on the ball. I want him to play with instinct. And when he plays with instinct, he's such a good finisher and he can do so many good things. The moment you start getting him to try and force things, taking on a defender, trying to sort of engineer a chance out of nothing, like he's not that sort of player. So we've got to tweak our style of play that allows us to release the ball quickly to him. We're going to talk about regains in just a second, but allows us to play him into space and really bring him back into the game, man, because I feel he's isolated out there. And when he hasn't got that left back supporting him, when he hasn't got that left central midfielder like Granit Xhaka was, he was so effective at those progressive passes. You know, he's literally the scapegoat. And I feel that Arsenal fans are very, very sort of quick to really write him off. And there's a few people in the chat now saying, look, he's a fraud, he's total rubbish, and this, that, and the other.
It's difficult. It's very difficult to play as an isolated winger. You have to have a certain profile. Like Saka, for example, is a better sort of 2v1 winger than Mo Salah. So if I was going to pick a winger to go past 2-3 players in a low block situation, I'm going with Saka over Salah. But if I'm talking about who's going to be more effective in front of goal when he's got space in behind, then it's going to be Mo Salah. So tactical profiles make a difference, and the system and the environment that you placed in make a difference. Someone like Martinelli is a really good run in behind type of winger. So if you were playing a sort of a big game where suddenly Arsenal are maybe the underdogs and you've got loads of space in behind, then Martinelli could come alive in that particular tactical situation. But if you're up against a low block and you've got no overlapping fullback and you've got Martinelli hugging the touchline, I can't think of a worse way of using Martinelli than that. It's like it's a very silly way of using him, in my opinion. Like for me, in my head, obviously this is like a really grade A version, but perfect left back for him would be someone like Marcelo or an Alphonso Davies. You know, these type of guys who just hug the touchline. They can control the left flank, and then you just free up Martinelli just to wait for little runs in behind. So he all that flank duties taken off his shoulders. So all he needs to focus on is the timing of the run, getting in front of goal. That would be the best way to use a Martinelli. But we haven't had that type of fullback profile out on the left with him.
I hear you. There's a lot of people agreeing with that. Taylor, by the way, who is now a Latte Firm member, says balling behind is his bag, referring to Martinelli. Remember examples against West Ham, Leeds, Palace, Real Madrid, even at the Bernabeu, of course. I don't know if that suffices his place in the squad, though. Yeah, it's fair to expect more from him. James D says, you are spot on, FK. Instinctive player, made to play very mechanically. That's a good way of describing it. Just going back to the fullback thing. So we've seen how Miles Lewis-Skelly, Jurrien Timber, Ben White, none of whom have really enjoyed that sort of final third penetration, if you like, or overlaps. An example of a player, and Arsenal fans are going to hate this because he has, of course, joined our biggest rival, Jeremy Frimpong. And there's the heat map courtesy of Optra Analyst from him last season at Bayer Leverkusen. Tell us the difference here and what the key is.
So Jeremy Frimpong, if he's up against players one-on-one, he will try and take on players, even though he's a wing-back profile. So he's almost like a hybrid between a winger and a fullback. And for me, I was really shocked that Arsenal didn't sign a player like him at the price packet that he was being offered at, which like 30, 40 million. You don't need to bring him in as like a regular starter, but in certain games or certain game states, he'd have been the perfect guy, in my opinion, for example, to go outside of a Bukayo Saka. I think other players that I can think of is someone like Denzel Dumfries. You know, I think he was on the verge of leaving Inter or whatever it was. I think that's another player that Arsenal could have tried to steal, because these type of fullback profiles would definitely hug the touchline and are capable of beating a man one-on-one. And I think that would really open up Arsenal in terms of being able to break open low blocks. I think it frees up Saka a lot more. Now, I'm going to another solution, but I think the time is too late now. I think someone like Gusto, who was struggling at Chelsea, could have been another option, because we saw what Gusto did for Cole Palmer in the Club World Cup final. He hugged the touchline, which then allowed Palmer, who was playing as a wide player, to just roam into these central regions and do these little feints. And then why these feints worked, because Gusto's on the overlap, or João Pedro's made the overlap. So when Cole Palmer is doing this sort of fake pass, it's because there's someone that's made the run. So the fake pass has then caught the eye of the defender. They've fallen for it, which has then allowed him to cut in to get the strike off. Now, if those runs aren't there, he can fake pass all he likes because they're just going to know, well, there's no one around the outside of you, then they can close off the shot. So this is the secret to making these inverted players more effective, is having that overlap or that decoy on the outside that can go it alone as well, I think.
Yeah, listen, obviously I watch Arsenal all the time, too much. And I know that Ben White's going to provide this solution. I really have confidence in that. I think Jurgen Timber's going to play those games where we need to be sort of pinned back and be a bit more defensive minded. I think Ben White's the sort of player that can make those overlapping. I'm a little bit nervous about what I'm hearing from our left-hand side and what I've seen. First time I've seen those Miles Lewis-Skelly heat maps, although, you can see what sort of position he plays on the pitch. We're going to talk about Arsenal in gung-ho mode towards the end, but there is something else that I wanted to get your thoughts on, Pythag, which is, of course, in fact, no, we're going to talk about it now. We covered this recently, and this is about Arsenal adding players of different profiles with different options for when we're chasing a goal, chasing a moment in stalemate, and all of a sudden we have a very different profile. Talk us through what we see on screen here.
So the reason why we came up with this graphic was that we were assuming there's not going to be any further signings. So there's not going to be any new fullback type of profile.
No Eze, sadly.
Well, you could throw Eze in there, I guess, to a degree where Martinelli is, or even a Saka is, to be fair. But yeah, we were assuming that, bearing in mind Arsenal's fullback situation, how do we maximize the attacking potency against, say, a low block or a mid block? Now, Madueke out on the right can replicate what, for example, Saka can do. Now, Martinelli, obviously keep him out on the left, but at least Martinelli will suck players to him. But Saka in the LCM or left cam position with Odegaard, I think because those wingers now have taken players apart, there's space now in the middle. And I think instead of just being Gyökeres and Odegaard, putting Saka there as this little maverick magician guy that can do everything on his own type of player within a lot of space, I think that's the secret. Because let's pretend you don't sign Eze and you put Declan Rice where Saka is in that graphic. I think that takes the potency down dramatically in terms of through balls, take-ons, shots, everything. But if you put Saka in there, last 15 minutes of a game, left-sided, and then Odegaard next to him behind, say, Gyökeres, he's going to get plenty of service, knowing as well that there's wingers on the outside who are super direct. I don't think there's going to be many low blocks that could cope with that level of attacking threat in the last 10 to 15 minutes of the game. I don't think you can do this type of formation from the start of the game. I think that's way too gung-ho. But I think in the last 10 to 15 minutes, if it's a stubborn type of opposition, you're up against 10 men or whatever it is, I think that could, in theory, open up teams.
And this combats two things, depth. We talked about the subs bench towards the back end of last season, left backs, a couple of academy kids, Raheem Sterling, maybe every now and again. Now that we've got Madueke, now that we have Victor Gyökeres, and obviously, Havertz isn't in this lineup, and when you've got to chuck everything into the mixer towards the back end, I like the fact that Saka's sort of given a different style. And, Ethan Nwaneri is another young player. Max Dowman, who's been doing bits in preseason, maybe he comes on and adds a bit of impetus. So all of a sudden, we have lots of options. We have lots of different profiles of players. We've got players that want to run at players. We've got players that like to shoot. We've got players that like to thread through balls. We've got players that like to just, bully with power and speed like Victor. So I'm really happy that Mikel Arteta and Andrea Berta have finally sort of addressed this. And this is going to be really important because, as much as we want to batter teams and be 2-0 up, 3-0 up after 15, 20 minutes, we're going to have to work. We're going to have to grind for these results. And Mikel Arteta's got to bring a level of unpredictability for the opposition. I do want to talk and sort of finish on this before we take any questions. This is a chart also courtesy of The Athletic that basically says exactly what it says on the tin there. Arsenal do not often convert possession regains into fast attacks. So when we win the ball back, we are the third worst in the league at trying to get a shot away within 10 seconds of gaining possession. And obviously I've pictured the main man there, Martin Zubimendi, who's our marquee signing for a midfielder this summer. We need to get better at breaking quicker, playing in transition and getting shots away. We need to be quicker or more direct in getting the ball up the field rather than sort of building from the back slowly. We saw, hints of that. David Raya booting the ball long in the friendly, and Zubimendi obviously can play left foot, right foot. How important is this Rice, to you as a team. I mean, it's quite interesting to see Arsenal and City bottom three there. You know, the Arteta and Pep Guardiola school of thought and mode of play.
I think it comes down to the fact that both of them are control freaks. And I mean it in a negative sense, because it's almost like they don't want to attack quick. It's the complete opposite to, say, Jurgen Klopp style of football, which is, let's just start with Bournemouth first. The reason why they're the kings of the counter press is that Iraola almost instructs some of his players to give the ball away on purpose. So what they do is they hit long balls, and at times it's like, what the hell, this is an aimless freaking long ball, but they'll do it just so that they can pin the opposition in the final third, quickly win it in that final third, and then within 2 or 3 passes, they've got a shot off on goal. The way this is effective is if your fullbacks are natural footed and are penetrative, because Kirkes, for example, he will, like, as soon as the ball's won, he will hug the touchline and quickly get crosses in. So he's high volume crosser down the left. And if you looked at Liverpool historically, obviously you had Trent, you had Robbo bombing down as well. And then you've got the inside forwards who can then get shots off. So you need to be ready to win the ball, and then everyone's got to flood forward quickly, but you've got to have width. So that enables the quick sort of reverse through balls or the quick shots off. What Arsenal do is, let's just say they've won it. It's like, let's just say we bang it out to Saka. Well, there's no overlap there. So now Saka's, let's just say he's up against 2 players. Now that's slowed him down. Now he's got to pass it into Odegaard. Now Odegaard's looking that way. He's passed into Rice, but then Rice has received it on his right, but he can't get a shot off now because someone's just blocked. Now I'm going to go, okay, now I'm going to play it into Martinelli. Martinelli's got no overlap, but he wants to go back into his right, so he's gone back into traffic again. By the time all of that's happened, that's not a fast attack anymore. It's a slow attack. So that's what's happening constantly. This horseshoe is killing this ability to shoot quickly off regains. So I think, like I said, getting the fullbacks right, getting the right foot players on the right side or whatever, these little things will make that split-second difference and allow you to get shots off quicker.
That's what we need, and this goes back to Jurgen Klopp's sort of heavy metal, whereas Arteta likes total control. Arteta, in fact, Lowry says, would rather have a controlled 1-0 than a chaotic 5-2. But I think the point remains, this is about being less predictable. I think it's about having more sort of, weapons in your armory, where you've got to have different options in terms of personnel. You need to have different ways of playing, and you need to be able to pull something on a team when they least expect it. And they know that Arsenal love to play possession football outside the opposition sort of box, that domination, that control, that suffocation, as words that I've used in the past, Pythag. And teams will often get us on the break, and it's like, oh yeah, typical Arsenal goal to concede, right? But we need to, like you've just said, and I think you mentioned it on the previous show, where lure your opposition into thinking that they have got control of the game. Let them play and advance into your half before you nick it off them. And then you've got to be so decisive in your actions, and you've got to be so deliberate and so full of intent and assertive with the way you move the ball up the field in 1-2 passes. A bit like what you said about Trent, the sort of pings across the centre backs. Van Dijk would always do it time and time again, and Liverpool would break like the red arrows. We've seen it all before. Salah running at pace, Nunez running at pace, like chaos factor.
Yeah,
we just don't have that. And I love the description that you gave, because it kind of brings back painful memories of we pass it centre back to centre back. He goes into Odegaard, he runs a little bit, does a little 360 pirouette, plays it into Rice. Rice has got his right foot. By then, mate, you're half asleep, and the team, your opposition have already got back into position. So I do feel that there is a need here for Arteta to do something. I don't know, obviously, what it is. I'm not a qualified coach. I'm just a bloke on a Saturday night talking about Arsenal with a new friend. But I see it. And what my eyes tell me is that we play almost one way, and we need to spice it up a little bit. We've got to move the ball quicker, move the ball differently. We need to have different types of players, which I think, to be fair to the club, they've done. Gyökeres is something we just don't have. We didn't have a real sort of hungry, tireless grafter from the front who is a bully of a player, runs and runs and runs, and he's a sort of imagine you play Havertz for 70 minutes and then Gyökeres comes on for the last 20. As a defender, you're just not going to be up for it. Likewise, Madueke, people are not keen on it, but as a profile, runs at his players, loves to shoot on sight. Eze also, he loves to shoot 3 shots per 90, which is higher than any other attacking midfielder in the Premier League. So I understand what Arsenal are trying to do, but this is really, really important, Pythag.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, those players that you're bringing in, like I said, I think from an Eze perspective, for example, I've mentioned that it might not mean the end of the horseshoe, but I think what these players coming in is you're bringing in profiles of players who are more match winners, players that are willing to take shots off, willing to try things that are unorthodox. So I think worst case scenario, you probably stay with the horseshoe, but at least you've got players that are more likely to want to do things with the ball and not be so passive with it. So I think whatever happens, we're going to see a more proactive Arsenal. Whether that's going to be enough by the end of the season, obviously we will see. But I think we should, in theory, see a more proactive Arsenal.
Let's hope so. I sincerely hope so, man, because we absolutely need it. By the way, just a couple of things here. Kimmo FC, who you talked about earlier on the show, says we shouldn't be so risk averse in the final third. We're one of the best pressing teams in the world and usually win the ball back quickly. The issue is after we win it back, got to be more direct. Direct is the word I was looking for. Exactly that, Kimmo. And by the way,
all
if
those
anybody's
players you mentioned
go on,
are going to bring directness, aren't they? In theory,
yeah,
Madueke
exactly,
is a direct player. Eze is a
exactly.
direct player. I mean, I'm working on Xavi Simon's video at the moment, but one of the key graphics that I'm going to put out is that Eze touch map versus Xavi Simon's wildly different. So Eze is a player who's very final third orientated. He almost just wants to wait for the ball and then he comes alive in the final third because his game's very geared towards outcomes. Whereas someone like Xavi Simon kind of gets a bit more involved in the playmaking as well as then getting in the final third. But from an Arsenal perspective, you don't want another sort of chef in the kitchen. You want someone that's just focused on outcomes. So Madueke does that. Eze does that, and Gyökeres almost certainly does that, relatively speaking, to a habit. So you are getting more direct player profiles within that squad.
I think you're spot on. Jonathan Whitkin says, talking about switching left to right, why not switch players? Martinelli on the right, Bukai on the left. This gives incredible cross and cutback feeds to Gyökeres. Martinelli's getting stick, but look at his work rate. His work rate has improved, and I'd like to see Arteta do that. And by the way, I was just saying on Kimmo, if anybody is unfamiliar with Kimmo's work, do check it out. He's one of the best content compilation creators on socials out there. And he's got a question for you, Pythag. Oh. If we can make one more big signing, who would Pythagoras in boots sign to make us more creative with more end product? And I mean, take Eze out of the equation.
Oof. For me, it would have been a fullback, to be honest with you. I would have
overlapping left back, maybe.
Could have been a right back, could have been left back. Doesn't really matter. But like, for example, someone like Denzel Dumfries for me would have been like a signing that I would have brought in.
So interesting. I see. It's funny. Like we talk about our challenges going forward, and very few of us, I certainly would have thought, oh yeah, right back, oh yeah, left back. Like you don't realize until you see the heat maps and what others are doing.
Fullbacks are so important in the modern game. Well, I think they've always been important, probably since maybe like the 70s, really. But especially in the modern game now, I think where we've almost seen a tactical downgrade, I think where the football's gone backwards, is in the fullback position. Because I think, for example, Bayern Munich 2012-13 with Lahm, Alaba, and that generation where you had Carvajal, Marcelo, etc. I feel like the fullbacks in that generation, or the usage of fullbacks, was almost at its peak. I loved how fullbacks were being used. Then we started to transition into this more inverted fullback era, and I personally don't think it's led to football improving in terms of tactical intelligence, if that makes sense. Purely because I feel like what it's leading to is more control, but more congestion. It's not really leading to opening up of teams. And then the reason why PSG have been effective is because they've been able to perfectly blend. Yes, sometimes they allow the fullbacks to invert a little bit, but then they also can go around the outside and hurt teams. We've seen so many goals from Mendes, Hakimi in key moments of games. So they've struck the perfect balance. And I think all the teams now, they need to look at that as the template, not just follow whatever, for example, Pep Guardiola does and think, oh, this is trendy, let's try this. You've got to actually think about, like, what's actually effective on a football match.
Do you know, it's funny, the Pep Guardiola effect. My son has just turned 6, and at Little Kickers on a Sunday, they're all playing out from the back. It's wild. It's like Pep Guardiola's legacy is.
No,
I
love Pep. Like, don't get me wrong, absolutely,
of course.
But what there's going to be certain things which, as a football man, we all got our own philosophies and stuff. Inverted fullback for me is one of those where I like it to a certain degree, but I think it's overdone to the point where it becomes tactically a hindrance by some teams. So you've got to know, for example, okay, in this situation, I might want inversion because I want control of the game. But now suddenly it's backfiring a little bit. Now let me give the instruction for that player to become an overlapper again. You know, like there's got to be variety and versatility in the usage.
I got you, man. I got you. By the way, last couple of questions just before we sort of wrap it up, because we have gone on for a little bit, but this is an education for me, certainly. And I hope you guys that are watching are enjoying it. If you are and he's tuning in for the first time, please do drop a like in the video, subscribe to the channel. I think we're just like tens away now from 25,000 subs, which would be amazing for me. JD says Max Dman, basically. You've obviously seen glimpses of him from preseason. Yep. He's 15 years old. He's absolutely wild. Do you think he might get much game time this season?
I think he could get game time purely because I think he's a one in a generation type of talent in terms of for British football.
Wow.
Like I think he's phenomenal. And for me, age doesn't really matter if you can show that you can handle it. For example, say Wayne Rooney was 16, but by 17 he was an England player, right? And he was running Euro 2004. So for me, we shouldn't just look at age as a number. We should look at whether the player is capable. Now, the question said, would he break into the first team? I think that's pushing it in terms of being a first team regular. But can he come on last 10 to 15 minutes of a game in certain games and like make it happen, make little things happen? I think, yes, absolutely he could. And should Arsenal make use of that? Yes, because what United used to do, for example, so cleverly under Sir Alex was, if you remember Kiko Makeda, now he rocked up 17 and he made a title-winning contribution, and then we never saw him again. Yeah. And that's fine, because sometimes you get these young players, you just use them in that moment, and it's fine if you never see them again, because you've used that youthfulness in that particular game state, because that's what was required. Now, I'm not saying Max Dman is going to be as bad as Makeda, no chance. But what I'm saying is, if you've got that courage on the ball and that bravery, and it's the last 10 minutes of a game, and personally, I think physically he looked like he could handle himself. I know it was a pre-season, but he looked like he could handle himself.
6 foot at 15.
Yeah.
So and let me. Yeah, mate, he's rapid. Let me tell you some stuff about him. I mean, this guy made his debut for the under-18s at 13 years of age. He scored in the UEFA Youth League at 14 years of age. He made his debut in the Premier League 2, so the under-21s, which sometimes you get 21s, 22s, 23s in, at 14 years of age. Like, what this kid is doing is not normal. It is absolutely absurd. But you're right. If he can come in and get a few minutes, it'd be amazing.
Also, I think Arsenal don't get enough credit for how good their academy is. Like, obviously, as a United fan, we get so much hype about our academy. But I look at Arsenal's and I think over the years, you know, like Wilshere and players like that, like ridiculous level of ability, the players that come through with Arsenal.
Yeah.
And Dman just strikes me as another sort of typical Arsenal, really high IQ, great technique type of player. Now, of course, we don't want to rush him too much to the point where he gets injured or anything. But I think you can't just hold these type of geniuses back. In my opinion, you've got to give these kids glimpses of game time, because otherwise you almost stagnate their development, because he's clearly a kid who's always been playing above his age group because he's that damn good.
He's insane.
Why be fearful of that? Embrace it.
Indeed. Ido, just closing, says, absolutely agree with all the talk about fullbacks. It really feels like now it's all being undone. Teams like Inter or Leverkusen with fullbacks blasting up and down. Interesting to see that all unfolding. Yeah, listen, that could be the next evolution for Arsenal. Listen, Pythag, it's been amazing tonight. I really appreciate your time. It's a Saturday night here in the UK. We got hundreds of people watching live on YouTube. Please do like the video and subscribe if you've enjoyed the content. Tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, at Pythag in Boots on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and obviously Pythagoras in Boots on YouTube. And yeah, like I said, do check out my TV show on the BBC. I do make myself look like an idiot in quite a lot of the episodes, but on the flip side, there are some moments where I showcase a little bit of genius as well. So yeah, keep an eye out for it.
Do you know what? I'm just about to watch the Robbie Savage episode where they've got to put forward an unpopular opinion. Yeah, so
yeah, they did me over on that one, but I managed to. Well, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but I did pretty well on that one.
But listen, I love that you're doing it, and I love that you've made time for me and for all the viewers of Latte Firm. Really appreciate your time. Listen, we'll be back tomorrow with Haroon Hickman. We'll look at the title race and sort of how we feel a couple of weeks before the start of the season. On Monday, got a special feature with Jake Entwistle. Many of you may not know him, but he's been doing some really good analysis of wide players for Scouted and other publications. Adrian Clark joins me on Tuesday to look ahead to the friendly that we have against Villarreal on the Wednesday. And then we've got so many other guests coming up. Sammy Mockbell's coming on. Henry Winter's coming on. So many of our friends are coming on. Late Night Loungers are coming back. So do keep tuning in. Thank you for all of your kind comments. Thank you for kicking off the YouTube channel memberships as well. And Pythag, you are an absolute don. Look after yourselves. Enjoy the rest of the evening. We will be back tomorrow. Take care. Bye for now.